So welcome, Akandadhi Prabhu, to the 30th Anniversary Communications Conference. We're very happy to have you here through video, especially because you were very much involved in the early days. I think one of the first conferences was held at your beautiful place in Wales. So we're happy to have you back with us many years later. And so welcome to the conference. And I'll start asking you a few questions and try to hear from you about some important topics related to the relationship between ISKCON and politicians and political parties in the UK. So should I start already the questions?
Please. Thank you very much, Mahaprabhu.
So the first question is, before you did your very famous Bhaktivedanta Manor campaign, the Manor campaign, which changed many things for the UK and for ISKCON in Europe. Then before that, how would you define the relationship between the Manor and ISKCON in the UK and political parties and politicians? What would be your analysis of pre-Bhaktivedanta Manor campaign?
Okay, well, through the 1970s, the issue then was helping, for instance, the police to understand the nature of our Harinam activities on the street, book distribution, but also there was a growing anti-cult movement, which was causing some real trouble with a number of our devotees and certainly causing mischief amongst the parents of many devotees. So I think a lot of our attention was on that. But without a conflict, the politicians, can only take an interest so far. They've got plenty of other things to worry about. We were cultivating our local MP, Cecil Parkinson, who was actually very friendly to us. We had connections with the Commission for Racial Equality when we launched our youth clubs. They gave us money to support that. And whenever we opened a youth club, we would always invite the local MPs, mayor, head of police, etc. So we were doing our best to cultivate and show that we were a responsible member of the community.
So how did the Manor campaign, maybe you can explain a little bit quickly what the Manor campaign actually was, so that the devotees who don't know, who are new, how important that was for the UK, what it meant, but also what impact it had in the development of relationships with the political world in the UK, because I remember this very famous demonstration, which was a historical moment in the UK for Hindus at large and for ISKCON especially. So maybe you can give us a little bit the synopsis of what the Manor campaign was and how it had an impact in political relationships.
Well, from the first day that we got back to Vedanta Manor in 1973, there was concern in the local village and in the area that a strange cult had come and purchased prime property in this very exclusive little village. So we were under pressure from a very early stage, and there was newspaper articles and things. This grew into action by the council in the late 70s. And in fact, there was a public inquiry scheduled for 1981, which resulted in a particular agreement about the level of activity. Particularly, we weren't to arrange any event with more than 1,000 persons on any day other than festival days. Then during the early 1980s, they were monitoring that situation and feeling that we weren't keeping to it. We had the situation of the sale of Chaitanya College, which meant we brought huge amounts of devotee activity back into the manor and around the area, and that caused even more consternation. There was purchase of properties in the local village, which really worried the residents, because they thought, well, this is going to destroy property values. So they used the leverage of the agreement that they had got us to sign about attendance to try and see if they could force us out once and for all. So they went to the High Court to try and get an injunction. That failed, and then they issued an enforcement notice in '87 to close the manor to all visitors and for even as a devotee community. It was very draconian. So at that time, we launched into our campaign. And it grew quite dynamically. We were very diligent. We cultivated the friends we had in the village, in the council. The local MP, Cecil Parkinson, again, was still very warm towards us, and I think he gave the support he could do in the circumstances. We tried to connect with everything that was going on. If there was any political activity, a local election, a general election, we were in the midst of it. And obviously, we were also cultivating church connections, and they were helpful. The Archbishop of Canterbury's office tried to help us. We had connections through Shonika's work with scholars. So we really tried everything to kind of build it up. But we also had to utilize the government's concern that this could spill into something bigger. And I think it's always important that in a campaign, there is the potential for things to not go the way the government would like. And it has to be appreciated that local government and central government have two different agendas on this. And we were playing that. The local government were playing to their local people, we need to close the temple. The central government were concerned, well, how will this play out broadly in the electorate, particularly amongst the Hindu community, and even in relationships with India, because we were cultivating at that time BJP, Mr. Advani, even the Shiv Sena with Bal Thackeray. We were skating on thin ice, you know, in some of our connections internationally. So we were trying to kind of get the government to understand that this could turn a little bit serious. You mentioned we had two big events. One was the march on the 16th of March, 94, which was the day the enforcement notice was to take effect. It was a Wednesday. And the police told me they counted people involved there. And we had a new initiative which had just been started called the Pandava Sane. And special branch of the police came and interviewed me, and they were saying, okay, can you tell us about who these Pandava Sane are? What are they about? And my reaction was, well, you know, they're not under our control. This is the Hindu youth. This is their thing. They're worried. You know, they see that no action is being taken on behalf of their temple. So I can't speak for them. And then 3 months later, we did another sit-down event outside the House of Parliament, which again was very successful. Not as big a number, but we did close the centre of London for about an hour and a half, and it got plenty of news coverage. The key things that I think are important in a campaign, one is you have to show you've got a certain position of strength and relevance, political relevance. And we were doing that. But at the same time, we were very careful not to have party affiliation. Even though one of our key campaigners, Frank Ward, was a very clear Labour activist in many ways, he was actually the person who made sure that if we ever had an event, we invited everyone cross-party. And then the other thing was that we needed clear presentation messages, absolutely clear that the public could get and that the media could get behind it, that sounded logical. And particularly, our campaign, I think, was successful because we had an offer of a solution. If the issue is access through the village, let us have alternative access at the back where it bypasses all residences. That was the simple pitch. A new access into the manor would solve the problem. And ultimately, you need to have a solution that they can buy into, which saves them face, which actually has been proved to be very beneficial for the local village, but at the same time has allowed Bhaktivedanta Manor uh, to flourish. So we kept all lines of negotiation open, even though I might be on the media claiming that Hertsmere are doing this terrible thing to the temple. I would be talking to the chief executive behind the scenes. I had a very close relationship with the head of planning and her colleagues, and we were talking to them. We were cultivating even some of the conservative councillors within Hertsmere. So there's always, and we were just trying to do it in such a way, like, let's find a solution. Let's, end all this trouble. So I think those were the kind of key elements that we learned from how to do a campaign. And there was one comment that I heard from one politician, which I think is really important for anyone in a situation to bear in mind. And that is, in a democracy, nothing is irreversible. Now, he told us that on the eve of the first decision on the public inquiry that went against us in 1990. And it was basically, his thing is, he, without telling us in detail, it was a signal, you're not going to get what you want this time round. Just keep on it. Keep trying. Nothing is irreversible. And at that time, we didn't even have the land for the road, so we couldn't have delivered that alternative. It was only later when we actually had the land in our hand and we could put the planning application in, and that we knew we are now in the strong position.
So the Bhaktivedanta Manor, the Manor campaign was like bringing you forward in the relationship with politicians and political parties by a few decades. You did a big leap during those years of the campaign because of necessity and because of your vision how to engage with different political places. And also it kind of brought you much closer to the broader Hindu community. It was like a big leap forward in both senses, I think, for the UK.
I think that's absolutely right. I think we were lucky that although we had these demonstrations and public disobedience, in one sense, it was done with good humor. We showed that we could control a large crowd and that there wouldn't be trouble. But, they had to bear in mind that, find a solution so that this doesn't get out of hand. So I think we demonstrated our links with the community very broadly and internationally. I think that was important. And we made a lot of friends through all of this. And afterwards, we were able to talk to the politicians, and they were actually very pleased with the way that everything had worked out. So everyone felt job well done.
I have the vision in my head of this demonstration, this sit-in in front of the parliament, where very pious old Gujarati ladies were sitting in and the police were picking them up very gently. And it was like a big thing for the Hindu community to do something like that in London, in the capital of the empire, and to be able to have their voice heard. And it was quite a big event.
Yeah, I remember after the big march, I was down on the embankment kind of greeting all the pilgrims who'd come from all over the country. We'd arranged buses and coaches, from the north and the Midlands, and they were all coming back to their coaches, and it was like, they were so pleased with themselves because they thought, for the first time, we've actually come together as a community. We've shown that we're not going to be just trampled on. We're going to, state what we believe are our rights in this country, to be able to worship as we like. They were so proud of themselves.
So I guess it was a catalyst for ISKCON to get closer to the political world, whether it, wanted it or not. We had to do it because we know they could open doors or they could close doors, and at the same time, the Hindu community to show unity and have their voices heard. So it was double, very powerful, message that we were doing there.
Yes, and I think we can see just how the manor and ISKCON's role within the Hindu community has kind of flourished in the last 30 years now. And government has been so supportive of it. Basically, the government and the politicians, and we have to understand they're always motivated for their own political ends, see that if they go to Bhaktivedanta Manor and the Swaminarayan Temple, they pretty well covered 80–90% of the Hindu community. They've got their message out. And supporting us, particularly through with the schools, the Avanti schools, has been an incredible step forward. So all of this has really kind of enabled us, of course, to develop facilities at Bhaktivedanta Manor in a way that we could never have foreseen previously. Everything has opened up. But at the same time, we also have to think from another angle. In one sense, the British government have now got ISKCON tamed.
Tamed.
Not tamed. In that
taped or tamed?
Huh?
Which word is it? Tamed or taped?
Tamed.
Tamed.
We are not the danger to their society that they saw in the early years. We are now the entity which can help them keep the Hindu community happy, because obviously there are other communities which make a lot more fuss than the Hindu community has ever done, and which could be, dangerous for the cohesion of society. But the manor, as far as the government is concerned, is playing a very important role, making sure that the Hindu community have got the basic cultural, religious things that they need and can carry on being good citizens. That's kind of how the government look at it. But also they see that we're no longer a threat. We are not converting their sons and daughters to ashram life. And that, that's an area that we would want them to support as well. And if I could use the example of another project in the UK, which is in Cardiff, where the Welsh government, the Cardiff City Council, and the Lottery Fund together have given well over £1 million for the building of a temple which they see as being a centre which will cater to the local youth and help these directionless, lost young people find purpose and engagement and healthy living through Krishna consciousness. That's what we hope we can actually convey to governments around. And this is what Prabhupada wanted. He spoke to politicians. We can help you with crime. We can help you with drug addiction. We can help you with, people's delusion, and being lost in society. Support us in our mission to bring Krishna consciousness to them.
So just one last question. Thank you very much. From your perspective, what are some of the positive results from more interaction with politicians and political parties? And what are some of the challenges that we have to be careful with when we engage more with political parties and politicians? Because there's always two sides to the story. So maybe just a little brief analysis on that before we conclude the interview.
Well, I think when we have our own challenges and when we have projects that we wish to develop, I think we have to bear the politicians and all the local figures. And it's not just those who have actually been elected. We need to see who are the movers and shakers in any kind of society. Who are the people that others listen to? And what are their motivations? Now, and I think that the important aspects in the challenges in trying to do this is we have to be very wary of their agenda. Why are they involving us? What do they want us to do? Are they leading us into engaging in some activity or distracting us or diverting us from our own mission in order to serve some of their purposes? And I think that this is something which will naturally happen. We will engage with particular individuals who we believe will help us, but actually we find that really they're just trying to do something that will benefit them or their party or their project. And
so win-win.
It's actually just taking up time and energy away from our own work. So I think that's something to be careful of. The other is to never align ourselves with one particular person or branch or party. You know, we cannot be seen to be in the pocket of, say, the Conservative Party or the Labour Party. We have to be seen as non-political in that sense. So these are the challenges. There's a bit of a tightrope to walk on all of these things, but we see that in so many of our centres and projects and countries, we've got very expert devotees who understand how to walk that tightrope and get the best results.
Thank you very much. I think the example of the UK is very, very important because it kind of shows us in Europe where we're going to have to go, in which direction we're going to have to go, because obviously in interaction with political parties and politicians, we're way, way behind. But we can see from the example and the experiences, the lessons that the UK has learned to follow in those footsteps, because, you know, the Manor campaign brought you to a much higher level, and now you're maintaining a very high level of interaction. And most of European countries were not seen so much necessarily as a cult or like dangerous, but were also kind of not very, you know, significant in their eyes for any, you know, important interaction with us in most European countries. So maybe with the exception of Hungary and a few others. So I think we really have to look towards that, developing that type of interaction, and how important it is for the movement to be able to grow.
Yes, I think we have to prove our relevance to the society, and so that the government will take notice. In Cardiff, one of that ways happened during the lockdown when the devotees expanded their Food for Life. They had up to 400 volunteers. We were working with the Swaminarayan Temple using their kitchen, and they just let us do all the work. And all these volunteers would help to pack up the prasadam into little boxes and deliver it door to door.
Wow.
So the local government saw two things. One is that type of charitable activity, but also the fact that we could coordinate and give young people something meaningful to do, which really kind of helped them in their own personal development.
So thank you very, very much for your contribution. We hope to have you in the future in one of our communications conferences. We'll invite you again. Hopefully it'll fit your agenda, your schedule, and we hope to have you with us in the near future.
Well, thank you very much, Mahaprabhu, and good luck
Hare
to all
Krishna.
the discussions you have. You've got some wonderful topics discussing, so all my best wishes to you and all the devotees.
If we can get things online, like for a little in the discussion part, if we have the internet capacity to do it, we might contact you for live answering some questions or something like that, but will depend on the technology if we're able to do it or not. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, glory to Prabhupada.